Sarah Hayes sat on the edge of her bunk, the low hum of the barracks settling into a quiet that felt almost unnatural. She stared at the chipped paint on the wall, trying to make sense of the exhaustion weighing on her chest. It wasn't just the physical fatigue from endless drills or the relentless push of the academy. It was something deeper, a gnawing sense that she didn't belong. Others around her moved with ease, their confidence almost contagious. But for Sarah, every step felt heavy. Every word from instructors and peers like a reminder she was invisible. The night was thick with silence when she first noticed it, a faint whisper that seemed to come from nowhere, yet close enough to touch. Sarah froze, her heart tightening. The sound was barely more than a breath, a murmur that carried the weight of a voice that didn't belong to the living. She blinked, searching the shadows, but found only darkness. It wasn't fear that gripped her, but curiosity. The voice spoke again, steady and calm, with a tone that held years of hard-won wisdom. "You're stronger than you think," it said. Sarah's breath caught. Was she imagining things? The isolation of military training could play tricks on anyone's mind. But the voice returned night after night, guiding her with quiet commands and sharp insights. It was like having a secret mentor, someone who knew exactly what she needed to hear when she was about to give up. At first, she kept it to herself, unsure if sharing would mark her as unstable. But the voice was persistent, and so was she. Days passed, and Sarah found herself waking with a renewed sense of purpose. The training, though brutal, became a puzzle she was beginning to solve. When she struggled with marksmanship, the voice would remind her to slow her breath, to steady her aim by feeling the rifle as an extension of her body. When exhaustion threatened to break her during long runs, the voice urged her to find the rhythm in her heartbeat, to push just a little further. The ghost was teaching her to survive and to excel. One afternoon, during a grueling exercise, Sarah faced a challenge unlike any before. A simulated ambush, with explosions ringing out and teammates falling back under pressure. Panic was the easy choice, but the ghost's voice was clear. Stay low. Move fast. Trust your instincts. She ducked behind cover, her movements precise, her mind sharp. Against all odds, Sarah led her team out of the danger zone. When they regrouped, some teammates looked at her with surprise, others with a newfound respect. The ghost never revealed its name until one night, as Sarah lay in her bunk, drained and aching. The voice was softer, filled with something almost like sadness. "I am Amelia Ross. I walked these grounds long before you. I lost more than I could carry." The name struck Sarah like a thunderclap. Amelia Ross. The name belonged to a woman once hailed as a hero, but lost in a battle few remembered. The weight of history settled on Sarah's shoulders. This was no ordinary mentor. Amelia was a living memory, a ghost shaped by sacrifice and courage. Sarah's training accelerated after that. Every lesson from Amelia was a thread connecting her to the past, a past filled with trials, pain, and honor. The more she learned, the more she understood the true cost of war and the strength it demanded. Doubts still surfaced, but they were quieter now, drowned out by a growing fire inside her. Late nights became a time of reflection. The ghost shared stories not just of battle tactics, but of the humanity behind the uniform. Sarah learned about fear that gripped soldiers before battle, the grief of losing comrades, and the fleeting moments of hope that kept them going. These whispers were not just guidance, they were a legacy, one Sarah was determined to carry forward. One evening, as the academy settled into sleep, Sarah felt a calm she hadn't known before. The ghost's voice was there, steady as ever, but something was different, more distant, as if Amelia was preparing Sarah for what lay ahead. The battlefield was calling, and Sarah knew the true test was coming. The quiet presence that had shaped her would not be with her in flesh, but its lessons would echo in every decision she made. She closed her eyes, steadying herself against the unknown. The journey had only just begun. Sarah woke suddenly, sweat clinging to her skin, the echo of distant gunfire ringing in her ears. The nightmare faded, but the voice lingered, a calm, steady presence in the chaos of her mind. Focus. Control your breath. See beyond the chaos. It wasn't just a dream. It was a lesson. She sat up, heart pounding, trying to steady herself. The ghost's voice was clearer now, guiding her through invisible mazes and unseen dangers. At the training ground, the sun beat down relentlessly as Sarah faced the toughest exercise yet. The instructors had set up a complex scenario designed to break even the most seasoned cadets. She moved through the obstacles, her muscles burning, every sense alert. The ghost's voice whispered strategies, reminding her to stay calm, to anticipate the enemy, to trust her instincts. But the other cadets were watching, some with suspicion, others with quiet amusement. Whispers trailed behind her. She's different. Where does she get these moves? Sarah ignored them. This was her battle to win. Suddenly, an opponent charged, aiming to take her down. Sarah instinctively sidestepped, recalling Amelia's lessons about patience and timing. With precise control, she used her attacker's momentum against him, sending him sprawling. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah's confidence surged. For the first time, she felt she wasn't just following orders. She was leading her own fight. But not everyone was impressed. A senior cadet named Marcus approached, his eyes sharp and challenging. "You think you're special because of some ghost story?" he sneered. "You're making us all look bad." Sarah's jaw tightened. She didn't have the energy for his doubts. "I'm here to learn, not to argue." Marcus smirked but backed off, leaving Sarah with a mix of relief and frustration. That night, Sarah lay awake, the ghost's voice softer but no less firm. "Don't let them break you. Strength isn't just muscle, it's will." She clung to those words. Training wasn't just physical. It was a mental war, and Amelia was teaching her how to win it. The ghost began sharing more detailed tactics, how to read an opponent's body language, how to stay silent when the world screamed chaos, how to make split-second decisions that saved lives. Days turned into weeks. Sarah's skills improved rapidly. She wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but she was smarter, more aware. The instructors noticed, and some began to respect her. Still, Sarah carried the burden of secrecy. No one knew about Amelia, the ghost that whispered in her ear, guiding her through the shadows. It was a lonely path, but one she accepted. One afternoon, a surprise inspection threw the academy into turmoil. Cadets were tested on both physical and mental resilience. Sarah's unit was tasked with a simulated hostage rescue, and panic threatened to unravel her team. But she found calm in Amelia's voice. "Lead with clarity. Keep your team close." With steady commands and unwavering focus, Sarah guided her squad through the exercise, turning potential disaster into success. The instructors' nods of approval were rare, but they meant everything. After the drill, Marcus cornered her again. "All right, maybe you're not a total fraud." His tone was grudging but respectful. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't victory yet, but progress. That night, Amelia shared something new, a memory. A flash of a battlefield long past, of comrades lost and promises made. You carry more than tactics. You carry their hopes. Sarah felt the weight of that truth. The ghost wasn't just a teacher. She was a reminder of sacrifice, of the human cost beneath every mission. Sarah's reflection deepened. This wasn't just about proving herself to others. It was about honoring a legacy she barely understood but was determined to live. Each lesson from Amelia was a thread weaving her closer to a purpose bigger than herself. As the days grew darker and the training harder, Sarah embraced the ghost's presence not as a crutch, but as a compass. The battlefield awaited, and with every whispered word, she prepared to face it, not alone, but with a spirit that had walked the same path before. Her journey was far from over. The true test of her strength, courage, and resolve was still ahead. But now, She was ready to face whatever came, guided by a mentor who was more than memory. She was a ghost that breathed life into every step Sarah took. Sarah could feel the weight of every stare as she entered the training hall. The room buzzed with quiet murmurs and sharp glances, a constant reminder that she was still the outsider. The ghost's lessons had sharpened her skills, but acceptance was a different battle altogether. She adjusted her uniform, heart steady but tense. Today wasn't just another drill. It was a final evaluation, a test that could decide her future in the military. The instructors laid out a scenario that demanded more than physical strength. It required mental toughness and quick thinking under pressure. Sarah's squad was tasked with securing a hostile building while protecting innocent civilians inside. The stakes were high, and failure was not an option. As they moved through the course, tension gripped the air. Explosions simulated danger around every corner, and teammates fell back, voices tense with fear. Sarah's mind raced, but the ghost's voice cut through the noise, calm and unwavering. Watch their patterns. Use the shadows. Trust your gut. She spotted a narrow corridor that could serve as a safe path for her squad. Leading with quiet authority, she signaled her team to follow. A misstep here could have meant disaster. The enemy forces, simulated but ruthless, pressed hard, testing every decision. Sarah's heartbeat quickened, but she didn't falter. When one of her teammates froze, paralyzed by fear, Sarah was there with a steady hand and a firm voice. Move. Focus. You're not alone. The team rallied, pushing forward with renewed strength. They cleared the building, securing the civilians and neutralizing threats with precision. After the exercise, the room fell silent. The instructors exchanged glances, then nodded in approval. Sarah's team had succeeded where many others had failed. For the first time, she felt the walls of doubt begin to crumble, not just around her, but within her. But the victory came with a price. That night, alone in her bunk, Sarah's body ached from exhaustion, and her mind replayed the day's challenges. The ghost's voice was softer now, carrying a hint of warning. Strength is not only in victory, but in knowing your limits. Remember, courage doesn't mean absence of fear. Sarah understood. The battlefield ahead would be unpredictable and merciless. Physical prowess was only part of the equation. She needed mental resilience, emotional balance, and an unbreakable will. The next morning brought an unexpected test. A message from the commanding officer called Sarah to the briefing room. The commanding officer, a stern woman with decades of experience, studied Sarah closely. Lieutenant Hayes, your progress is undeniable. But real war isn't like the drills here. Are you ready to prove yourself where it truly counts? Sarah's throat tightened. The question wasn't just about skill, it was about survival. The ghost's voice filled her mind once again. You are ready. Trust yourself. She was assigned to a deployment team headed for an active conflict zone. The reality of war loomed closer than ever. Her thoughts swirled with anticipation and fear. The ghost's lessons had prepared her, but nothing could simulate the chaos she would soon face. Days before deployment, Sarah spent time studying maps, memorizing every detail of the terrain, every known threat. The ghost guided her through tactical decisions, sharing insights from battles long past. Each lesson felt like a lifeline, weaving experience into her resolve. Her fellow soldiers were wary. Some respected her rapid rise. Others doubted her unorthodox methods. Marcus, the senior cadet who once challenged her, now offered a reluctant nod of acknowledgement. The battlefield would be the true judge. On the eve of deployment, Sarah stood beneath a sky heavy with stars, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The ghost's presence was a quiet comfort, a reminder that she was not alone in the fight. Amelia Ross was more than a memory. She was a guide through the unknown. Sarah closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. The battlefield awaited, and with it, the chance to prove not only her skills, but the strength of a spirit that refused to be broken. The moment Sarah stepped off the transport and onto the dusty, sun-baked soil of the war zone, everything changed. The air was thick with heat and tension, the distant hum of engines blending with sharp bursts of gunfire that echoed far too close for comfort. She felt the weight of her gear pressing into her shoulders, but heavier still was the invisible pressure, the knowledge that this was no training exercise. Lives depended on every decision she made. Her team moved cautiously through the narrow streets of the town, eyes scanning every shadow, every alleyway. The ghost's voice was there, steady and clear in her mind, cutting through the chaos. Breathe. Observe. Listen beyond the noise. Sarah forced herself to slow her breathing, to focus on the smallest details. The flicker of movement behind a broken window, the shift of dust at a distant corner. Every instinct sharpened by Amelia's lessons. Suddenly, a sharp crack tore through the air. One of her squad members fell to the ground, clutching his leg, pain flashing across his face. Instinct kicked in, but panic threatened her eyes. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos, calm and commanding. "Cover me. I'm moving in." Her heart pounded as she knelt beside him, checking for wounds. The bullet had grazed his thigh, but the bleeding was manageable. She recalled Amelia's words, "In the darkest moments, clarity is your weapon." Sarah directed her team to form a perimeter, eyes darting for threats as she applied a field dressing. Every second was a battle between fear and control. The enemy could return at any moment, but Sarah's focus held steady. Once the team member was stabilized, Sarah ordered a tactical retreat to safer ground. As they moved, the ghost's voice guided her through the labyrinth of streets, suggesting alternate routes and warning of potential ambushes. It was like having a seasoned commander whispering in her ear, a presence from the past blending seamlessly with the present. They reached a temporary base, where the commanding officer awaited. The tension in the room was thick, but Sarah felt a strange calm. She reported the incident with precision, her voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The officer nodded, acknowledging her composure. This was more than she had hoped for. That night, sleep was elusive. Sarah lay awake, replaying every moment, the sounds, the smells, the fear. The ghost's voice was softer now, almost a whisper. "You did well, but this is only the beginning." She realized then that Amelia wasn't just a guide for survival. She was a reminder of the cost of every choice, the weight of every life saved or lost. The days blurred into one another, each mission a test of nerves and skill. Sarah's team faced snipers hidden in ruins, improvised explosive devices, and the constant threat of betrayal from unexpected quarters. Every decision was a razor's edge, every success hard-won. Yet, through it all, the ghost's presence was a steady beacon, grounding her when doubt crept in. During a patrol, Sarah noticed a young local boy watching from a distance, eyes wide with fear and curiosity. She offered a small nod, a gesture of peace. Amelia's voice reminded her that war wasn't just about combat. It was about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The memory of fallen soldiers mingled with hope for a safer future. One evening, as Sarah prepared for another operation, a sudden explosion rocked their base. Panic surged through the ranks, but Sarah's instincts took over. She coordinated the response, moving with precision to secure the perimeter and tend to the wounded. The chaos was overwhelming, but her leadership held firm. After the dust settled, the commanding officer pulled Sarah aside. "You've proven yourself under fire. Not many can say that." Sarah felt a surge of pride tempered by the knowledge of what lay ahead. The battlefield was unforgiving, but she was no longer the uncertain recruit from the academy. Amelia's lessons echoed in her mind. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to keep moving forward despite it. Sarah understood now that the ghost was not just a mentor, but a symbol of resilience, sacrifice, and hope. The war was far from over, and neither was her journey. But with every step she took, Sarah carried Amelia's spirit with her, a silent guardian, a guiding light in the darkest hours. The battlefield was where she proved it, and she was ready to face whatever came next. Sarah crouched behind a crumbling wall, her eyes scanning the war-torn street ahead. The sun hung low, casting long shadows that seemed to creep like ghosts themselves. Every nerve in her body screamed alert, every breath measured and slow. She could feel the tension vibrating through her squad as they awaited orders. The ghost's voice whispered steady in her mind. Patience. Control. Trust your senses. Their mission was clear. Secure the supply route that ran through the heart of the conflict zone. It was vital to keep the lifeline open, but the enemy knew this, and ambushes had become a deadly game. Sarah's team moved carefully, each step calculated. The smell of smoke and dust filled the air, a constant reminder of the danger lurking nearby. Suddenly, a distant noise snapped her attention. A faint shuffle, barely audible over the wind. She signaled her team to halt, and in the silence that followed, the ghost's voice urged her to trust her instincts. Sarah's eyes caught a flicker behind a pile of debris, a shadow that moved too deliberately to be the wind. Enemy movement. Prepare for contact, she whispered. Her squad tensed, weapons ready. The next moments unfolded in a blur of action. Gunfire erupted from concealed positions, echoing sharply against broken buildings. Sarah's heart pounded, but she remained focused. Suppress and flank, she commanded, voice firm despite the chaos. Amelia's voice guided her hands, her mind, every decision precise and swift. Sarah led the flanking maneuver, closing in on the enemy's position while her team kept the attackers pinned. The firefight was fierce, each second stretching unbearably, but Sarah's leadership held firm. One by one, the enemy retreated or fell, their resolve broken by Sarah's calm authority. When the gunfire finally ceased, an eerie quiet settled. Sarah scanned the area, counting her team, no casualties. Relief washed over her, tempered by the grim reality of war. She knelt, inspecting the ground where the enemy had fired. Small signs told stories, discarded shell casings, footprints hurried away. The battlefield spoke to her, and Amelia's voice helped her listen. Back at the command center, Sarah debriefed the commanding officer. Her report was concise, honest, and filled with tactical insights. The officer's nod was slow but approving. "You're becoming a leader we can trust," he said. The words carried weight, but Sarah knew the road ahead was still long and dangerous. That night, sleep was a distant memory. Sarah lay awake, mind replaying the day's battles and decisions. The ghost's voice was softer now, weaving stories of Amelia's own experiences, missions where courage and doubt fought in equal measure. Every victory has a cost. Remember that. Sarah thought of the faces she had seen, her squad, the local civilians caught in the crossfire, the enemy fighters who were once just like her. War was not black and white. It was a blur of survival, loss, and hope. The ghost had taught her this hard truth, and she carried it like a fragile flame. The following days tested Sarah in new ways. A sudden outbreak of violence in a nearby village called for swift action. Her team was deployed to protect the innocent and restore order. The streets were chaotic, filled with frightened families and armed insurgents. Sarah's voice was a steady anchor amidst the storm, her commands clear and compassionate. During one tense encounter, Sarah spotted a child trapped in the crossfire. Time slowed as she made a split-second decision to risk her own safety and dash across the open street. Bullets zipped past, but she reached the child and pulled him to safety. The moment burned into her memory, a symbol of why she fought. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah sat quietly with her team. The day's weight settled on them all. The ghost's voice reminded her that courage was not just in the grand acts, but in every small choice to protect, to endure, and to lead. Marcus approached, his usual skepticism replaced by respect. "You've changed the way we fight," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, knowing that every step forward was a victory not just for her, but for those who had come before and those who would follow. The battlefield was unforgiving, but Sarah had proven herself. With Amelia's spirit guiding her, she faced the uncertain future with determination and hope. The journey was far from over, but Sarah was ready, stronger, wiser, and unbreakable. The air was heavy with dust and tension as Sarah led her squad deeper into the rugged terrain. The mission was critical: secure a hidden cache of weapons before it could fall into enemy hands. Every step forward felt like walking on a razor's edge, each shadow a potential threat. Sarah's senses were heightened, every sound amplified. The ghost's voice echoed in her mind, calm and unyielding. "Move with purpose. Eyes sharp. Trust the silence." The team advanced cautiously, scanning the rocky hillsides and abandoned structures that dotted the landscape. The sun blazed overhead, beating down mercilessly, but Sarah pushed forward, driven by a mix of duty and determination. Her squad trusted her, but she knew the weight of responsibility was hers alone to bear. Suddenly, a distant rumble shattered the stillness. Sarah froze, signaling her team to halt. The ground trembled beneath their feet. A convoy of enemy vehicles was approaching fast. Panic threatened to rise, but Amelia's voice steadied her. Plan. Adapt. Lead. Sarah quickly assessed their position. The terrain was rough, offering some cover, but little room for error. She whispered orders, directing her squad to strategic points, creating a defensive perimeter. The convoy roared closer, and the first enemy troops dismounted, weapons ready. Gunfire erupted, sharp and relentless. Sarah's heart hammered, but she stayed focused, coordinating her team with precision. They returned fire, taking advantage of the terrain and their careful positioning. The battle was intense. The enemy fought fiercely, determined to protect their cargo. Amelia's lessons echoed in Sarah's mind. Use their momentum against them. Patience is a weapon. Sarah waited for the right moment, then led a counterattack that caught the enemy off guard. Her squad surged forward, seizing the advantage. One by one, the hostile forces fell back or surrendered. When the smoke cleared, Sarah's team secured the cache. The victory was hard-earned and costly, but it felt like a turning point. Exhausted but triumphant, Sarah allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. The ghost's voice was proud but reminded her, victory is never final. Back at base, Sarah debriefed her commanding officer. Her report was detailed, highlighting the tactical decisions that had turned the tide. The officer's respect was evident, but there was no time for celebration. The conflict raged on, and Sarah knew this was just one battle in a much larger war. That night, sleep was elusive. Sarah's mind replayed the firefight, the faces of her team, the sounds of gunfire. Amelia's voice was a soothing presence, sharing stories of resilience and sacrifice. "Remember, courage is a series of small acts," the ghost whispered. Sarah thought about the men and women who had come before her, the ghosts of battles past that still lingered in the air. Their sacrifices fueled her resolve. The mission was no longer just about survival, it was about honor. Days later, Sarah received orders for a new assignment, a humanitarian mission to deliver aid to a nearby village caught in the crossfire. The contrast was stark. This was a chance to protect and rebuild rather than fight and destroy. Sarah welcomed the change, knowing the importance of every life touched by the war. Arriving in the village, Sarah was met with wary eyes and cautious smiles. Children clung to their parents, and elders watched silently. Sarah's team worked quickly, distributing supplies and offering protection. The ghost's voice reminded her, strength is also in compassion. As Sarah helped a mother carry water, she caught sight of a mural painted on a crumbling wall, a tribute to a woman who had fought in wars long ago. The image was hauntingly familiar. Her heart tightened. Amelia's legacy was everywhere, in the land, in the people, and now in Sarah herself. That evening, Sarah stood alone under a star-filled sky, the cool breeze brushing her face. The battlefield was no longer just a place of conflict. It was a place of memory, courage, and hope. Amelia's spirit was with her, a guiding light through the darkness. The road ahead remained uncertain, but Sarah knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just a soldier. She was a keeper of stories, a bearer of strength, and a beacon for those who needed courage to carry on. The battlefield had proven her, and she was ready for whatever came next. The night air was thick with anticipation as Sarah prepared her squad for the most dangerous mission yet. Intelligence had reported that a high-ranking enemy commander was meeting with insurgents just beyond the valley. Capturing or neutralizing him could turn the tide of the conflict. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Sarah's fingers tightened around the straps of her gear as she reviewed the plan once more. The ghost's voice whispered steady in her mind. Focus. Every move counts. Trust your team and yourself. The memory of Amelia's lessons felt like armor around her heart, shielding her from doubt. As they advanced under the cover of darkness, the squad moved like shadows, silent and precise. The moonlight cast eerie shapes over the rocky landscape, but Sarah's eyes adjusted, scanning every detail. Her team relied on her confidence, her unshakable calm. She could feel the weight of their trust, like a mantle she was determined to bear. The enemy's camp was nestled in a small clearing, guarded but not impenetrable. Sarah signaled for the team to halt, then whispered the plan. A coordinated strike would disrupt the meeting and give them the upper hand. The moment approached like the slow beating of a drum, every second stretching, every breath measured. Suddenly, a rustle broke the silence. One of the enemy's scouts spotted them. The quiet was shattered by alarmed shouts, and gunfire erupted in a deadly frenzy. Sarah's world narrowed to the mission, to the safety of her squad, to the goal ahead. Amelia's voice surged through her mind. In chaos, find your center. Sarah took a deep breath, rallying her team. Commands flew fast and clear, and the squad responded with fierce determination. They moved as one, weaving through the chaos with practiced precision. The firefight was brutal, but Sarah's leadership held steady. She spotted the commander, a man surrounded by guards, and ordered a tactical maneuver to isolate him. Her heart pounded, adrenaline surging, but her mind was razor-sharp. The ghost's teachings gave her clarity in the storm. In the final moments, Sarah and a small team broke through the enemy's defenses. The commander was captured, resistance fading as his men fled. The mission was a success, but the cost was visible. Wounded comrades, exhausted faces, the silent weight of lives changed forever. Back at base, Sarah stood among her team, pride mingled with sorrow. The ghost's voice reminded her gently, courage is not without loss, but in choosing to continue. She felt the truth deep within her, a solemn promise to those who had fallen. That night, Sarah found a quiet moment alone. The sky was a canvas of stars, each one a silent witness to the battles fought and the sacrifices made. She reached for the small locket Amelia had once worn, a symbol of strength passed down through time. Memories flooded her mind, Amelia's voice, her courage, her unyielding spirit. Sarah realized the battlefield was more than a place of conflict. It was where legacies were forged and passed on. She was part of something greater than herself. The next morning, Sarah met with Marcus. There was a new respect in his eyes, a silent acknowledgement of her growth. "You become a leader we can all count on," he said quietly. Sarah nodded, knowing that leadership was a responsibility she carried with humility and strength. As the days went on, Sarah continued to lead, to protect, and to inspire. The ghost's lessons remained her compass, guiding her through uncertainty and fear. Every challenge was met with the resolve of a soldier who had proven herself, not just to others, but to the spirit that whispered in her ear, The battlefield was still dangerous, unpredictable, and harsh. But Sarah had found her place within it. With Amelia's ghost as her mentor, she moved forward with purpose, ready to face whatever the future held. The story was far from over, and Sarah knew she would write the next chapters with courage, wisdom, and heart. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold. Sarah stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, the cool morning air brushing against her face. The battlefield that had tested her in every way was now quiet, but the memories it held were as vivid as ever. She felt the ghost beside her, the steady presence of Amelia Ross, the mentor who had shaped her into the soldier she had become. Sarah's journey had been marked by danger, loss, and unexpected triumph. Every mission, every decision, had been a lesson etched deeply into her soul. But now, standing on the edge of what felt like both an ending and a beginning, she understood something more profound. The battlefield wasn't just where she proved herself. It was where she found her purpose. Her squad gathered around, tired but alive. They were more than soldiers. They were a family forged in fire and trust. Sarah looked at their faces. Young, determined, resilient. She saw in them the same strength that had carried her through the darkest hours. Amelia's voice echoed softly in her mind. Lead with your heart, and they will follow. Orders came through to prepare for extraction. The mission was over, but the war was far from won. Sarah knew she would return to the front lines again. But this moment was hers, a breath of peace amid the chaos. She allowed herself to feel the weight of all she had endured and all she had achieved. As the transport helicopters approached, Sarah took one last look at the valley. It was scarred by conflict, but there was a strange beauty in its ruggedness, a reminder that even in destruction, life endured. The ghost's presence was a comforting shadow, a promise that Amelia's spirit would always walk beside her. Back at base, Sarah was greeted with quiet respect. The commanding officer approached, a rare softness in his eyes. You've set a standard, Lieutenant Hayes. Your courage has inspired many. Sarah nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere, on the lessons learned, the lives touched, and the legacy carried forward. That night, Sarah wrote a letter, not just to Amelia, but to every soldier who had come before and those who would follow. She wrote of courage born in struggle, of the strength found in unity, and the power of a mentor's unseen hand guiding through the darkest battles. The battlefield was where she had proven it all, and where she would continue to prove it every day. As dawn broke again, Sarah stood ready for whatever came next. The ghost was no longer just a memory. It was a living force within her, a source of endless strength. She knew the fight would continue, but so would she. Because in every step she took, Amelia's spirit marched with her. The battlefield had shaped Sarah, but it had also set her free. She was no longer just a soldier. She was a beacon of resilience, a symbol of hope for those who faced the impossible. And as long as she breathed, the story of courage, mentorship, and unbreakable will would live on, etched not just in history, but in the hearts of all who dared to fight. The mission was complete, but the legacy was eternal. Sarah's journey was far from over, but now she knew she was ready for whatever lay ahead.